So, something that's very unique and special, if you dial in, you stay committed, that eventually your mentors and people who guided you will become your constituents and people that you triangulate ideas with. And, a lot of people have been coming to me and asking me questions about clear cooperation. And I've had the good fortune of speaking to this fine looking gentleman, Mr. Neil Weichel, every week for probably 15 plus years. And he's been instrumental in terms of kind of sharing with me mental maps and strategies. And, now we triangulate ideas and it's just a wonderful thing. I'm very grateful for the friendship and the mentorship. And I said, hey, Neil, instead of me and you just having this conversation, which will be very fruitful and productive for us, let's have this conversation in a public forum so we can share it with other people. So thank you kindly, Mr. Neil Weichel, for taking the time to be with us here today.
Yeah, great to see you. And we haven't done something like this for a while. And frankly, I'm probably better at 12:15 West Coast time than 5 a.m. West Coast time. So let's hope we do some good today.
It's true, man. It is 5 year time. So clear cooperation. I've sold real estate personally for about 17 years, and you have sold real estate for twice that amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
And that beginning half, let's say that first 15-ish years that you were in the business, you had the good fortune of kind of witnessing and watching a very clear change in the way information was distributed,
Mm-hmm.
in the mechanisms with which it was distributed, and also the efficiencies that it created in the marketplace. So I think a lot of people right now I'm seeing in posts that I'm doing, they're like exceptionally opinionated about this clear cooperation thing. It's like, well, I think we need a history lesson first. So if you'd be kind enough to share, like when you first got in the business, who had all the control of the information? How was it disseminated to the public?
Yeah, it's a good place to start, Aaron, because what we're going to talk about today, I'm quite sure, is information and who controls it, and why different people in the real estate business are trying to have their will forced on the people that are in the business, whether it's for their best interest, the consumer's best interests, or perhaps even the agent's best interest. So here's your history lesson. In 1991, if I had a buyer or a seller that wanted to know about the market analysis or the homes they were going to view that weekend, they called me and said, Neil, what's for sale? Now I want you to think about that for a second. What's for sale? They didn't know. When I showed up at your home to present to you in 1997, the market analysis, I had all the information because you didn't have access to it. Okay. Now I know that may sound ridiculous. In fact, if the public's watching this, they're like, are you kidding? What kind of dark ages did you live in? Right. But that's the way the business was. If you think about a big, thick restoration hardware catalog, right, or whatever big catalog you still get in your mailbox, that's called an MLS book back then. And every house was in there. And get this, it was printed every 2 weeks. So as soon as you got the brand new, fresh MLS book, it was outdated. Okay. You had to call to make sure the property was available. Is it still this price? You literally looked at a piece of paper that told you about a listing. Okay. The computer did not exist for that. Okay. Fast forward to the early 2000s, the internet takes over. And now all of a sudden the public has access to information. Okay. All of a sudden the agents have computerized data that they can provide and work with. So for the first 10 years of my real estate career, if you wanted to see property, I chose it. You didn't choose it. For the first 10 years of my real estate career, if you wanted to sell your home, I told you what it was worth, and you almost never questioned it because in rare exceptions, you didn't know anything about those homes and I knew everything about them. That's how this all got started.
That is wild. So essentially the way that data, what was really constrained to two places. One was your agent and their knowledge of the market, and two was a book that would be printed twice a week, or twice a month.
Twice a month, yeah. In our case, I mean, maybe other people printed it, but I'm in a very big board in North LA County, right? The San Fernando Valley, Santa Clarita Valley, big board. Our little area out here had its own book. San Fernando Valley had its own book. Orange County had its own book, et cetera, right? So that's how it
Yeah.
worked.
Yeah. And because of this, I'm imagining, because I don't know, but based on what you're describing, that led to, I mean, a really lack of transparency, right? So nobody had any idea what their neighbor's home sold for. Nobody had any idea what was listed. I'm sure pulling comps was rather interesting in terms of trying to figure out value. So having transacted in an environment, because it seems to be that what's playing out here is there's a particular segment of the industry and one company in particular that's very aggressively and persistently trying to lead the charge to go back to a environment in which there's a lack of transparency. Can you talk to about kind of like frictionally what that lack of transparency caused in the process of buying and selling?
Yeah. So, well, I think first of all, there was a computer, right? It's just you printed on a DOS program. You printed out these sheets, right, that had the homes for sale or whatever, and you shared them with the client. Always you had control. That's kind of key to what we're going to talk about. And then what happened is you had these IDX feeds, right? These third-party feeds that started it, the Zillows of the world, if you will, and different companies that were providing information. And I'm going to tell you, back then, this to me is fascinating because it's really come full circle. You had the agents saying, whoa, whoa, whoa. If the public has all this information, we don't control it anymore. That's a terrible idea, right? So there was a lot of pushback, especially with your tenured, old-time agents. Oh, this internet thing is awful. This is the worst thing that's ever happened to us. We're not going to control what properties are being shown. We're not going to control the narrative the way we've been able to. What are they going to need us for? The same, right? They're going to be able to, and of course, that was exactly the idea, right? You wanted, these parties, these companies that got involved in the real estate business and started using the real estate business to create a business. And Zillow's an obvious example just because they were so successful at it. They said, hey, if we can get this, we can put together a business and we'll probably be able to disseminate information better than those silly real estate agents can. And for the most part, they were right. I mean, what app from Realtor.com or any other real estate organization is as popular as Zillow? The answer is none. Okay. I'm not happy to say that, but that's the truth.
Yeah. So they were servicing a very clear and specific need, which was transparency. So I wrote down as you were speaking, which is really great, that if we replace the word clear cooperation with the word data control, I think it'll help people to understand it better. Why such a hubbub? Why it's such a thing?
If you're not a real estate agent and you say clear cooperation, the public's like, what does that mean exactly? Right. Yeah. But if you're a realtor, boy, you know what it means.
Yeah. And I'm wondering, so you sold real estate during this entire transition. And as the public got more access to information, and that transparency increased rather dramatically, right? Because it went from being very opaque and very kind of like good old boy network, right? Only the agents kind of had access to this data and information, to then becoming, okay, public facing and something that they could look at regularly and easily, and they could access it, whenever they want, just at the click of a button. How did that improve the industry? How did that help with transactions? How did that help with volume? Because I'm imagining it allowed agents to be able to sell more homes because of that transparency.
Yeah. And we had this very odd period of real estate from about 2006 to 2011 that was pretty much dominated by the REO short sale, distressed sale market, especially in your market in Florida, mine here in Southern California. But information, whether it be on foreclosure properties and all kinds of stuff, started to become available. And you could really feel the public, especially the investor public and that kind of thing, reaching out. Hey, I know about this. I know about that. I know about this, and they were really trying to control the process of how they might go about either buying or selling real estate. It didn't really become what we currently experience now, where the public goes to a place, gets information and says, my house is worth what? Until about 2010, 2011. I remember doing a video in 2011 for my clients about Zestimates and why they were wildly inaccurate, which they were at that time. And Zillow, to their credit, spent a lot of time, energy, and money trying to really fine tune and perfect the algorithm that they use to give a more accurate value for the consumer, so that 6, 7, 8 years later, they were far more accurate. The same with Redfin, the same with Realtor.com, the same with any site, because that's what the public wants. Hey, what's my house worth, right? They want to go and see, hey, what is, and I remember you and I role playing and adding to the pre-qual script, at what price did you feel like you wanted to, set on your home to create value in the eyes of a buyer? They would answer, and then our follow-up would be, and what does Zillow say?
Yeah.
We wanted to know if the client knew what the online valuation was, and quite a bit of the time they did. Remember that? Quite a bit of the time.
Oh, and it was very smart on their part, because to your point, it's a very clever way, based on behavior, natural behavior, because the vast majority of Americans have the majority of their net worth tied up into their home, to increase adoption.
Yeah.
To ensure that a lot of people are looking at it. We even had to augment our approach, where I would say, like, hey, you strike me to be someone who's, pretty savvy. I'm sure you've gone online, see some of these sites that give estimates of value. So did you have an idea at all of realistically what you're thinking in terms of price? So it ended up altering, kind of how we present. At the same time, in many ways, some people might argue, well, that makes our job more harder, because in the past you could just be like authoritative and just be like, hey, this is what it is, and like that sort of thing. At the same time, I don't think a lot of people recognize that real estate as a marketplace all around the country, if they don't have these databases, whether it be MLS systems or aggregators of data, the process for the consumer is horrible. Like, it takes extended periods of time to transact. Multiple different agents have to get involved. You basically just have to put it like pay for Google ads and just pray that somebody finds it, which is wild, right?
Well, you asked a question that I didn't really answer, which is, how has it made it easier? There are some very important ways it's made it easier. Number one, technology has made helping buyers much easier. You no longer need to show the amount of property you used to. They're far more savvy. They're far more educated. You can take a buyer out if they've been looking online and having conversations with you about neighborhoods and value and floor plans and whatever they care about. And, you can take them out and show them 3, 4 homes and write an offer right then and there. That was much more difficult to do in the 90s. A, because there were more choices, and B, because they wanted to see everything and they weren't at all sure that they had. So there's so many ways that, all the information that's available to the consumer, making them more educated, has been a great thing for agents. You talk about volume. There's no way that you could sell 300, 400 homes back in the 90s. Nobody did. I mean,
what I said? It was so interesting. I was on a walk with Carla, my wife, and I was like, this is so fascinating to me that I see in the comments, Neil, so many of these agents view MLS systems and these other aggregators of data like Zillow as like the enemy, and they don't recognize that they actually are partners that help you to facilitate all of these transactions. Like, sure, did they create a business model around it? Yeah, I understand that. At the same time, though, I looked at Carla, I said, there is zero chance, none, that I would have ever been able to do 100 transactions a year, 10 years in a row, 200 deals a year twice, without these systems. There's no way possible.
No, tech made that possible for sure. Whether it's an iPhone or better online tools or DocuSign or all those things, right? I mean, we used to, if you want to take me down memory lane, we used to fill out listing agreements in triplicate, right, and pull one out. Here you go, client.
Like a credit card.
I'm sure everybody under 40 is laughing their heads off right now, but that's the way it used to be, and that's progress and all the rest of it. What this really comes down to, though, this discussion we're having today, Aaron, is, are we going to continue to move forward, right? Or are we going to retreat,
yes.
Right? And so this is, first of all, I should give you this disclaimer because I have no idea who's going to see this. Everything I'm going to talk to you about, like it always is what I think. as Neil Weichel, a real estate broker, right? I have I'm no mouthpiece for Remax, who I've worked for 32 years, or, you for EXP or whatever. This is what we experience as people performing a service to the public, right? And using different tools to provide better levels of service. At the end of the day, the thing that bothers me the most about this discussion we're having, and it's way up here, is I see so many people saying, we're going to do it this way, and we're going to do that, and we're not going to participate in this, and this is bad, and this is good. And it has nothing to do with our customer. It has everything to do with them and them trying to protect whatever it is they're trying to protect, or control whatever it is they're trying to control. But the whole idea of clear cooperation, okay, and boy, you should see the California listing agreement. There was enormous paragraphs there about to the person signing the listing agreement, to the homeowner, about clear cooperation and why you should do it. And it's if you're not going to go in the MLS, it has to, it all but made you feel like if the agent in front of you is suggesting anything other than putting this in the MLS so that all agents could see it and show it, and at that time, of course, get a published commission for it, then you're really doing the dumbest thing possible, right? In other words, it was, talk about scare you if you didn't participate in clear cooperation. And we as agents were trained, hey, if you don't share this with everybody. I had a client, I'm just going to tell you a quick story, 2 years ago. And this client was in law enforcement. He didn't want to sign. He didn't want to be on the internet. The hoops I had to jump through, right, to be able to help this man and his family sell his home without having the entire world know about it, because he didn't want that. It was exhausting. Okay. So I understand that there's definitely a place for some sellers that don't want everything about their situation to be out there. And NAR acknowledged that. They said, okay, we've been coming down super hard on the whole idea of, everything has to be listed and everything has to be shared and everything, but we're going to have this little provision. And boy, let the games begin, right? Remember when we talked a couple of weeks ago about Rocket buying Redfin?
Yeah. And
what was the conclusion you and I, as real estate professionals, came to about that? Why do we think that Rocket did that?
The data.
Data, right? Data, control of information. So when you're talking about but billions, right? And you can see that they are positioning themselves to be a major player, a one-stop shop. Once that that Redfin is integrated in, you can see where this is going in our business, right? Control, right? Compass saying, hey,
I know. Hey, wait. Yeah. So I could probably share. Yes. So what's wild to me is that, to your point, having processed, you probably sold, 5,000-6,000 homes. I've sold 2,000 in my career. Maybe a small percentage. There's always been transactions, infinitely small, that require discretion, whether it's high profile, law enforcement, celebrity, people in politics, whatever, right?
We've all had them.
Yeah. And that's always existed. And there's always been mechanisms for them to transact. What's fascinating to me, and it very much so, I think bothers me the same way it bothers you, is that there is a specific company that's making it a business model. That's entirely different, right? And what I'm hearing is a lot of this is for, it's the choice. It's their choice. They should be able to do what they want. And what I think is really interesting about that is I actually went and listened to their quarterly call transcripts.
Okay. Do tell.
Where they're presenting to investors. And what's fascinating is what they present to investors is slightly different than the message to the consumer and to the general population.
I'm shocked to hear that.
Yeah, I'm shocked. And oh my gosh, clutch my pearls. I can't believe it. So what I found so interesting is there was a point made very specifically before they went on. They said, wait. Okay. This is such an important part of our strategy. I want to spend the remainder of our call talking about it. So it's like, this is such an important part of our business strategy to become profitable that we're going to spend the remainder of this conference call having a discussion about how we think it's going to work and why we think it's going to work.
Are you reluctant to name the company for some reason?
I think people understand what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying? I think
You mind if I do?
Yeah, I don't mind.
Well, look, if Compass is going to create a business model, and again, let's call it what it is.
Yeah.
They have published that they will give their agents an additional, now $100 doesn't mean much to you and I, but they're giving them $100 as an incentive to go out and take listings that are not shared in the MLS.
Yeah,
that are these private listings, right? So please don't tell me that this has anything to the benefit of anybody other than Compass, to try to recruit agents. Okay, now I have a lot of good friends at Compass. I work with Compass agents all the time. I'm quite sure there's a number of Compass agents going, what in the world is our company doing, right? Or at least they should be. And for that to be the policy, right? And I bet if you were, behind the even more closed doors there, they're saying, look, this is how we're going to recruit top agents. We're going to sell them on the idea of we're going to be our own database. And you know what, Aaron? I get it. I get it for this reason. As agents, we allowed, and I'll pick on Zillow because they were the most successful at it. We allowed these companies to take our listings, right? And sell those leads to agents that were not us. Agents that knew nothing about the listing. It was not in the best interest of our sellers to have whomever paid the most money for the lead talk about my new listing over on Berkshire Place, right? Or whatever, right? So you've got all kinds of these things that are not necessarily what's best for the consumer, not necessarily what's best for the agents, not necessarily what's best for clear cooperation and full transparency and all this. But when you start talking about doing this as a business model to specifically be your own MLS or your own little whatever, I mean, I don't get how in any world that's good for sellers.
I don't. I'm the same way because I started to think about this, Neil, because you may be like, hey, maybe I'm missing something. So again, on a walk with Carl, I'm like, what would happen if Aaron Novello or Neil Weichel took a listing and it became known to the real estate community, all of the agents in the community, that we did not put it within the multiple listing service within a certain amount of time of taking that listing, and we're trying to sell it ourselves? Oh my gosh, we would get calls. They would call the broker and they would write us up. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So what's fascinating is instead of individual agents doing this, we have an entire brokerages thinking of doing this.
I've never seen it.
Well, but here's what I think is driving it. You tell me. So we have a lot of conversations around models and economic models. And I think in the short term, the stock market is a voting machine. I think in the long run, it's a weighing machine. Mm-hmm. Who's actually making money. And right. I think a lot of these traditional older vehicles, let's call them brokerages, because of changes in the industry, because of capping mechanisms, and because of net profit declining dramatically over the last 50 years. Company retained dollar to brokerages used to be 50%, 50-50, right? They kept 50 cents of every dollar. Now it's
when I entered the business, a 50 split was pretty common in 91, 92, 93.
That's right. And now it's 5 to 8%. I met with a guy in California, Neil. He has 1,000 agents in a franchise system. He showed me his profit margin. It was 5%. So what's happening is these which is interesting because it also happens to be the ones that aren't really making money. Even though Compass is new, it's the same model, just trying to say it's a technology company, but it's a brokerage firm. And if you look at their quarterly reports, what they're getting in is the ancillary services and this private kind of inventory thing. Nothing's new under the sun. They're not innovating anything, but those companies that are starting, I think Berkshire said they're going to do their own inventory and other ones. It's it's self-preservation. It's an attempt because they're drowning. They're not making any money. So it seems desperate, man, what are you guys doing? Where you seem to be going backwards. We don't want to share information. We want to go back to books, back to where I don't know what you have on the market for sale. And I got to check on 3, 4, 5 different sites, right? To try to find it. And it seems to me that part of what's driving this is it's desperation to try to become profitable.
It could be. I mean, honestly, I don't know enough about it. I just know, like, I care about what the consumer is going to ask me and my team about.
Yeah.
That's what I care about. And if I'm a consumer and I'm hearing, they hardly understood all the commission changes, right? And now they're going to hear this stuff about, or maybe they're going to interview a Compass agent. Compass isn't very big in my marketplace, but there's certainly many marketplaces where they're quite large. And they're going to interview 2-3 agents, and that Compass agent's, kind of, appeal to the seller is going to be, ooh, I've got this shiny new whatever. Well, no, you don't. You have a mechanism in which essentially only Compass is going to show your listings.
Yeah.
And Compass is
and then you know what they say, which is interesting, because again, I'm engaging because of this feedback, because I post a lot, and obviously a lot of the agents that are commenting on some of the stuff that I'm posting is Compass agents, and they're like, well, it's not going to be on our website. I said, okay, well, let's think about this. Zillow gets like 360 million views a month, and your site gets like whatever it is, like a fraction of that. Like, tell me how that is in the best interest of the consumer. Like, how does that logically try to have that make sense to me?
Let's think about this. Go back for a kind of a history lesson, if you will. Is the market always one in which the seller is got lots of buyers out there and multiple offers always happen? And I mean, I would suggest that right now in a lot of markets, we're seeing a change. Now, let's say you're a seller. Again, go back to our customer. Let's say you're a seller and you just want to get your home sold, right? And ideally, in a reasonable period of time and in a perfect world, to a really well-qualified buyer that's going to pay you the highest possible price. Now, does that sound off to you in any way? Isn't that really what all sellers want? Okay. Is the best way to get the highest price and the best qualified buyer, because we all know that multiple people are going to look at your home and some are going to be better qualified than others. Some are going to give you the terms you want, some won't, right? Is the best way to find your buyer that's going to solve your problem, Mr. Seller, to let this part of the market know about it and have access to it? Or is it for everybody to have access to it and let the public? I mean, honestly, we're talking about some stuff that can go down discriminatory paths and all kinds of things that this is a mess. And so Zillow, because they care about Zillow, what do they say? They come out and they say, okay, if you do that, you can't be on Zillow. Yeah. And if you hold back a listing, even for a week, which NAR just said is our new policy, right? The National Association. If you hold it back, you can't be on Zillow.
Well, right? And it seems like
good luck.
Yes, exactly. There's multiple players here. So NAR seemed to really kick the can because Compass has been the one driving this, and they keep pestering and pestering and pushing. And then finally they were like, okay, they made a decision that made nobody happy, which is like, all right, maybe we'll give you a little bit more time, but it's not like where you could do this exclusive inventory thing. Fine. Well, nobody else has like the might that Zillow does. So Zillow steps in and they flex their muscle and they're like, okay, cool. You want to withhold data? Great. Then if you publicly market a property and you do not put in the multiple listing service in 24 hours, that listing will never be on Zillow's platform.
And you know why, Aaron, they have to do that? Think about this for a second. How many sellers or buyers say to the agents that you work with and coach and train, right? Or to me, if I'm out talking to them, am I seeing all the homes for sale? Are all the homes for sale on Zillow? To this day, they still aren't sure that all the homes are available, right?
That's right.
The consumer, the public is looking for more transparency, more information, more help, right? And we're going backwards. And if they really knew what was going on, they'd go, oh boy, you guys just don't get it.
What do you
like as an industry, you don't get it.
Yeah, I agree. And then what we see, and so watch these like these dominoes. So we see Zillow, they put their foot down. Hey, this is not in the best interest of the consumer to have shadow inventory, or they don't know all the properties that are available.
Or homes they don't know about.
and homes they don't know
People
about.
won't go to Zillow if they don't think they're going to see all the homes there, right?
Yeah. So is there some self-interest? 100%. But I think it's also, I think there also is truth to it. Like, hey, it's the main consumer-facing platform for, real estate information. So they say, hey, okay, good. We're not going to give you access to our platform in perpetuity forever. The property will never be listed. Then Redfin comes around because they have a lot of traffic too. And they say, yeah, we're going to do that too. And then the guy for homes.com, because he's trying to take over Zillow, spent $1 billion to try to buy attention. You know what he says? He starts to say, yeah, the sellers should have their own. I'm like, oh, I'm shocked you think that. Like, I'm shocked that that's your position when you're competing with Zillow, right? And then an MLS system. This is, I think people have a lot of this built up animosity and perhaps maybe professional jealousy, because Zillow and their kind of founders saw something that nobody else did. And, I think that there's this constant perpetual, like professional animosity or hate around it. Like, oh man, like we give you all the lists about, okay, well, they thought about it. Great. You know what I mean? They executed it. That's business. Tough luck. That's the way it is. Deal with it. Right. But when an MLS system follows the same track that Zillow says and Redfin says, it says, hey, you know what, Compass, if you publicly market properties, and you don't put it in our MLS system, if you have agents in our MLS system, we are cutting off your IDX feed.
Well, you saw what just happened, right?
Yep.
In the Northwest.
Yep.
They shut off the feed, right? The MLS, now, not for very long, but that was their way of saying, hey, if you don't want to play nice in our sandbox, if you don't want to cooperate, right? Yeah. I've always said, every once in a while I'll speak before groups, and I always say the same thing at some point, which is we are in a very, very competitive, right? I compete against all the agents, not just in my marketplace, in my own company, right? For listings for business, right? A very competitive, cooperative business. As soon as I take that listing, I've got to work with all those agents to try to help me get it sold, right? I mean, it's always been that way. It's always been the most effective way, right? For sellers to have the highest amount of traffic, the greatest amount of offers, and the best possible selling experience. And now we're talking about all of these big, strong, financially well-stacked companies trying to say, hey, all these changes in the real estate industry, we think we should do it this way. And at the end of the day, because they're doing it for what they think is what's best for them. And I understand, a capitalist society. The consumer is who's going to be left going on the sidelines. No transparency, no clarity. Who am I hiring to sell my home? Is my home going to be exposed to all the buyers in the? Oh, it's not. You think this? You think our customers want that? I mean, I keep saying the same word: customer. We forget who pays us, right? It's those guys. How about we do a better job, not a less better job?
It's funny because when I make these posts, they haven't been like really aggressive. They really haven't. I haven't been like kind of bad. I'll just say, hey, it just seems kind of interesting to me. What should be, and maybe I'm wrong, what should be driving this conversation purely and specifically with no exceptions is what's in the best interest of the consumer. That's it. And what I wrote down based on what you said is the following: transparency and collaboration is best for the consumer experience. A lack of transparency is not best for the consumer experience. It makes it more difficult. It makes it more opaque. There's going to be more paperwork, more challenges, more friction, and a lack of cooperation really also isn't great for the consumer experience. I mean, Leo Perea, the CEO of EXP, he said he sold a property for his family, his parents who live in Belize, to get them, to come live closer to him. You know how long it took, Neil? 4 years to sell the property. And they had to go through 5 different agents. And he basically said, you basically take out Google AdWords and pray that somebody finds it. So I think that a lot of the agents, they just are, in a way, what the response that I see and all this stuff, it's very, very spoiled. They don't understand that everybody else on the planet envies our system because it's the most frictionless.
That's what I was going to say. Talk to my son-in-law, who's a top real estate broker in London, and ask him about how they do it. It's archaic.
And Leo's pointed out something too. So because they don't have an MLS system, they have no database that everybody can go to.
Correct.
there's a company there, and I'm blanking on their name, but it's a company that's it's like Zillow, but they're
Right
the,
move. Right move.
Right move. And they are the dominant player. And
they make more money than Zillow.
Oh, and here's why. They actually charge agents to put their listings on their platform. And you know what Leo said, Neil? He's like, to my face. One of the higher ups, like at that company, Right Move, he's like, to my face, said, I am going to raise the fees that we charge you by 10% forever. And what Leo was like, he can do that. So like, I don't blame him. Like, if I could do that, I'd probably do that. Like, so what people don't recognize, like, if like our system is the envy of the world, it is. It allows agents to actually make a tremendous living, particularly the ones that like view it professionally. I remember you telling me your son-in-law was like, how much money you make? Like, are you kidding me? That's what, like, his mind was blown, right? So it allows us to not only serve more people, it allows it to be way less friction than in other environments, take way less time, and compensate us as agents in a way that's, you know, wonderful, and like help more people and service more clients and allow them to get what they want quickly and efficiently. And what it seems like all of these conversations are, you know, around control and controlling data without, I guess, because of self-serving interest, it seems like various different parties are really intentionally and purposely trying to dismantle it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think there's, look, there's a lot of things going on right now as we speak, right? Good Friday, 2025. I can only imagine what's going to happen over the next 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months, right? Yeah. Because you have these big, you know, you have big NAR, big organization trying, frankly, to stay afloat,
yes.
Right? To stay relevant. I mean, that's the truth, right? Now you've got local MLSs, many of which, I mean, you've seen the headlines in the last year, are having issues, are having trouble, solvency issues and such. So you've got companies like Compass, as an example, that very recently lost enormous amounts of money. I'm quite sure they don't want to do that again. So how do they stay relevant? You've got companies like a Redfin, which has a terrific app that the public loves, but they're losing money hand over fist. So what happens? Consolidation, a very logical one as far as I can tell. And so that's normal stuff, though. The idea of saying, hey, let's take it back to 1991 where the public doesn't have access to information, and you know, we have all these exclusive listings with this company and exclusive, and if you want to see our listings, you come look at property. I mean, that's what they do in London. You want to see Johns & Co.'s listings, you got to go see Johns & Co. agent at the house, right? You want to go see Seville, right? Or one of the other high-end, right? It's so inefficient for the customer, and it's so inefficient for the agents, right? I don't know. It's an odd time to me to think that after 35 years, I'm watching as an industry some of these changes. They just they're not what's best for the customer. And there isn't a business on this planet, you've read plenty of business books, in which when the company or the entity makes decisions that are based on what they think is best for them and not their customer, it doesn't end well.
Yeah, and what's really kind of frustrating for me is having conversations with people who try to convince me that it's best for the customer. I'm like, how is that even remotely true?
I'm curious. What did they say?
Well, they say, hey, there's data that shows that properties that are off market sell for more. There's data like home building
data that shows the exact opposite, Aaron.
Exactly. And the thing that's interesting about data is you can get it to say what it wants. They also point to like, well, home builders do this all the time. They don't have, I'm like, why do you think home builders don't want transparency? Because, you know, there's a specific reason why they don't want transparency, because they don't want you to know like what they initially started off at price wise, what they're selling for now, what concessions they gave to who, or like what, right? So it's specifically designed, right, in a way. And you know, I think what's also true is that because our system is so efficient, it actually causes people to, you know, kind of assume that it's this thing called like resulting, because it's been this way. It means it's always going to be that way. So it's so efficient, and the marketplace in the United States has been pretty robust, even though we've dropped transaction volume. We still do a lot of transactions.
Mm-hmm.
And you can put policies in place where you think, oh yeah, like this is going to make it better, but you can lose so slowly that it feels like you're winning. And what seems to be happening is like you said, there's normal business that takes place, consolidation, things of that nature. The issue here is structurally how it's done.
Mm-hmm.
They're chipping away at the structure, at the ecosystem, which is the envy of the world, right? In all other markets where people sell real estate. And to your point about MLS systems going down, I was on a leadership call with the CEO of EXP and another kind of executive there. And they're like, yeah, we decided to initially come out and support, the Clear Cooperation and support Zillow's stance and abide by what they're saying, because we have been in situations where MLS systems where we operate go down.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, look, dude, we want to be able to service you, and we want to be able to service the kind of, the community. So I guess from your perspective, like, none of us have a crystal ball. Me and you don't. At the same time, we have good judgment. We've demonstrated that over an extended period of time. We're not always right, but we're kind of right-ish. Like, how do you see this continuing to play out? Because they've definitely dug in. Both sides are like, it's very clear. Now it's a boxing match.
Yeah,
like, how do you see that playing out?
It's a boxing match that has plenty of notes of soap opera wrapped around it too. It's I get it. These are high-powered people, and they're some of the things that I don't spend a lot of time reading it all. I just glance at the headlines and get the gist of it. But from what I can tell, there's an awful lot of pettiness involved here,
and posturing and peacocking, and yeah.
Okay, fine, that's great. But at the end of the day, and I'm biased, the real estate industry takes place, whether there's a loan involved or a builder involved or a title person involved or an escrow company, all those people that are involved, right? Managers and sales managers and Leo and all these people, it all takes place because an agent, and typically two, put a buyer and a seller together to the benefit of both. Right? If that doesn't happen, none of the rest of it happens, right? So we should be focused on how do we have better agents, better training, better skills, right? How do we do a better job? How do we listen better? How do we present better? How do we help people? How do we do all of the things that are important for us to create a transaction from which so many people benefit? There is no Zillow lead to sell if Neil Weichel doesn't take the listing to start with, okay? There is no check to a lender if another agent doesn't help their buyer get into escrow on my listing, right? And that's the core of this business. And so all this other stuff, right? And it's a lot of stuff, really should be coming back to the point of how do we help do more of that? Because last I checked, we're on track for a third straight year of way below normal transaction count for a whole bunch of reasons, right? Yep. How do we solve that problem so our sellers can move where they want to move, the people that want to retire can retire where they want to go, and most of all, our poor buyers who are stuck in lack of affordability can have a home, right? And here we are talking about, you can't have my listing in your IDX feed, and you can, my goodness.
Hey, what it reminds me of? Because it's funny.
It has nothing to do with making us as an industry better.
No,
and that's, I'm on a soapbox today because I'm at the age now where I just don't suffer, that kind of stuff.
I know, it's fantastic.
I've known a lot of people in this business that are really good and have their heads and hearts in the right place, and they're wicked smart, and they've done a great job. Look, I don't love the fact that Zillow wants to sell me my own listings back either from a lead point of view. So I choose not to participate. Right? I do different things to create buyer leads. And I understand a lot of my good friends spend a lot of money with Zillow. The only reason we as an industry don't love them, and now one company is, going head to head with them, is because they did what we should have done better than we did it. Period. End up.
Yeah,
That's
it's like
how business works.
Yeah, it's like
And
what I was
so
saying.
I don't like it here, but it is what it is.
Yeah,
so maybe we should figure out a way to do it better using all the information we generate so that the consumer will come to realtor.com or whatever it is. And we can get away from all this silliness, and all the information can be shared. And there can be a very simple policy, and NAR can hand it to us that says, hey, for your clients that don't want to be on the market for 7 days or 10 days or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can do that because that's in the best interest of your client. They want it. And then at the end of 7-10 days, everybody will see it, right?
Well, yeah.
Not Zillow saying, well, if you do that, you'll never be on our platform. Come on. That's not what's best for the customer.
Yeah, it's funny because it's like all of these people that are competing with each other for revenue are having this like squabble while all of these buyers and sellers are just sitting here being like, hey man, I just want to buy and sell a house. Like, what are we doing? and I wrote down, how do we add more value and solutions? And to your point, like instead of getting emotional about what is, which is like what I see a lot of this, and instead of trying to force your way through in terms of like an opinion or an approach or a business strategy by trying to litigate and like all that other stuff to get your way, like just deal with what is, deal with the systems and the process that we have at our disposal, and add more value to more people, because whoever adds more value wins in the end.
Yeah, I mean, that's been my experience. It's so funny to me. Like people ask me all the time, my gosh, how did you sell all these homes? Right? Because, it's a lot of homes. It's almost 6,000 homes in 35 years. That's a lot. Okay, great. It was very simple. I never put a commission check before a client. Never. Right? I knew that if they knew I had their best interest at heart to start with, that they would take care of me. They would be happy to use me again, because that's the way I would want to be treated. I really think if the public knew what was going on, they'd be asking the question of like, well, there they go again. How does that help me as a home seller or home buyer with the process? It sounds like it makes it more complicated. It sounds like it's restricting me. It sounds like it's not good for me. And they would be right.
And they would be right. And it sounds like you guys are fighting over each other because you want control and all of you want more money. Like that, like, yeah. which
they already think.
Which they already think. We're just making it worse, man. It's like, wait a minute, you guys make all this money. Now
gasoline on the fire.
So it'll be very, very interesting to see how this plays out.
Yeah.
If you're open to it, as time progresses and we get more information, we can hop back on, because I know you're a wealth of, knowledge and wisdom. I'm super appreciative, not only of your mentorship, but of our friendship. And sure. Look forward to reconnecting soon. And
dude, I'm just as fascinated by this as you are. I mean, in a sociological kind of way, I'm like, what in the world? I didn't see this coming. So yeah, let's revisit in 6 months, and maybe some people will take a step back. Maybe there'll be a little cooperation, right, between some of these big players. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, we'll see what happens as it develops. We'll reconnect and have some more conversations. So I appreciate you, brother. Happy, Good Friday, and look forward to reconnecting soon.
See you soon.
See you soon.
Bye.